Okay, so now we're going to come back to, now we're going to fill in these cells above here. Okay, so we're looking at females, and what we care about is, can we learn something about are the patterns among females different than the patterns among males? We saw that value proposition 2 is the most important, and it's above the pass rate of 50%, but can we learn something here? So if we look among just the females, how many ones do we have here? So that's pretty easy to do with Excel. I can see that there's 14 ones, or I'm sorry, 5 ones among these 14 categories, and I can do the same process for each of those. So I have 5 ones here, 12 ones here, 7 ones here. And you can see that again, value proposition 2 is more important, and maybe within females it's kind of borderline. Maybe value proposition 3, wanting more original outfits, is still, you might not want to say that you don't want to focus on that anymore, because it's about 50%. And then we can do the same thing among males, where we can add up these, add up these ones among value proposition 1, value proposition 2, and value proposition 3. And then you get these numbers here. So you can see here that, again, value proposition 2 is the most important, the highest pass rate. It's kind of borderline. One of the things that you went out when you were doing the interviews is you thought, well, I think females are going to be more interested in this, but I'm not sure. So I'm going to interview both females and males, and it does look like all of the numbers for females are higher than for males. So it seems like there's a good pattern there that makes sense. Now we're going to move on to the next one. Now we're categorizing by age, and I changed these back to when we were looking just at age, and we can look at how many passes do we have on value proposition 1 for those under 25 or less. So we just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Is that right? And that corresponds to 35%. So it goes 7 out of how many were possible. So there are 20 yellow rows, and I only have 7 ones in this column among the 7 rows. So the pass rate was 35%. And again, the biggest thing that people will do wrong is they'll count these things up. They'll say, oh, this number actually adds up to 14, so all of them should. This is just coincidence that these numbers add up to 14. They could add up to 3 times 14, or they could add up to 0. Any number in between those, right? Because you have 3 different value propositions. In this case, they add up to 24. In this case, they add up to 14, even though they have the same, total people that were interviewed. Okay, so now we'll do the same thing here. If you add up the ones in the yellow here, in each of these columns, you get 65 and 45, and then you add up the ones among the white rows, and there's only 8 of them. Obviously you're going to have smaller numbers, but the percentages could still be the same. So now you see here, that's interesting, is those that shop less, those that are younger do have bigger numbers typically than those that are older, but when we look at value proposition 2, having purchase regrets, the numbers are about the same. Now, these are not statistically significant differences that we're measuring. We're just looking at kind of comparing numbers in a really rough way. I would say, well, it's about the same for value proposition 2. So I wouldn't not focus on older, at least it goes up to like 31 women that are a little bit over 25, because it seems like they're still interested in value proposition 2. Okay, so you can do the same process here, where you fill in the numbers, where we had the green rows based on number of trips made, and you get these numbers here. And you can see that these numbers are about the same. But it looks like those that shop less are still interested in wanting more original outfits. So that's something that you could look into. Okay, so this is how you come up with this table. This table is what I would like to see on your interview sheet, and I'll show you the rubric. Okay, so let's go through these questions here. What seems to be the strongest value proposition? Well, you can see that this pass rate is the highest. One thing that I need to look at really quickly here. I think these numbers, I switched them. I think they should go like this. Let's do that real quick. I think these numbers are switched. So this should be 4 and 4, this should be 10 and 9, and this should be 3 and 8. Okay. I had made a typo, I remember, in this spreadsheet because I had switched these columns. So I'll save that so I don't do that anymore. Okay, so again, value proposition 2 is the highest. But it looks like those that shop more are more interested. So what I had said before is probably wrong about this number being higher. Okay, so the strongest value proposition is 68%, right? And that's the only number that's over 50%, which would, if you had said 50% was what you thought would be the pass rate, that's the only one that's higher. We can see again that among the subsamples, females, all these numbers are higher for females than males, all the percentages. You compare these. It looks like maybe for value proposition 2, age doesn't matter. And that might be true for value proposition 3 as well. These numbers are really quite close. So probably there's still value to those that shop more and those that shop not quite as much of having purchase regrets. One of the problems, as I said before, converting data just to zeros and ones, that's the biggest step, the biggest leap that you're making here. So that can be an issue. And we don't do things just like a survey because you kind of learn through the process. So I want you to put these into your assignment for the interviews, and I'll show you the rubric here real quick. Okay, so here's the rubric. It's on Web Campus. We went over it in class. I want a one-page report. Okay, so you may need to use small spacing. Okay. And small letters, smaller margins, but make it fit on one page. I just want one page. And if the report has 4 sections, you're going to use these 4 sections on the next report as well. You're going to describe your hypotheses. You're going to have 2 types, value proposition and then one other type of hypothesis. Your customer development, so what you did, you have to show photos to convince me that you actually did this, some examples of questions you asked, and some insightful responses. And then your quantitative summary table. And then finally, insights. What did you learn from this? Do you need to change anything about the business model canvas? So I have a few notes here too. You're going to get peer feedback on this, and then if you want, you can come and talk to me about your business idea too, and I can give you some feedback. I've given you an example here. Again, he shows the hypotheses. He explains where he thought the percentage cutoff would be for each of his value propositions. He explains his customer segments. In this case, he did customer segments as his next hypothesis. He explains the types of interviews that he did, how many total, how many hours spent. That was nice. He showed some pictures. He explains some of the questions he asked, some of the examples that he got, and then he shows the customer development results table, just like I showed you. This is all I want to see. I don't want to see, let's go back here, I don't want to see this. Okay, I don't need to see all of that. I just want to see this little table. And then finally, the insights. So compare the value proposition pass rates to the hypotheses, and then any BMC changes that result. Okay, so that is what you need to turn in, and you're going to get peer feedback. It should be a lot of fun to learn from the other people in class about what you've done and what they've done and any insights that you can get. Thanks.